Hello, everyone. Welcome to the next in our In Motion series. My name is Sophia Berger with WSP. And for today's series, we were going to talk about rail and specifically longer distance rail. So not transit that you see in the city, but how you get in between major cities here in the US. And I have my wonderful panel of experts here again, Davy Kim, Sean Wilson, and Paula Hammond. And Davy, Sean, and Paula, I don't know if you all have had this experience. I certainly have had it multiple times where you tell someone at a party or a barbecue or something that you work in transportation in the US and they say, oh my gosh, I just came back from Europe and why can't we have rail in the US like rail in Europe, and go on and on about it. So, I mean, the good news is that we have a president and a secretary of transportation right now that are total enthusiasts about rail. So we have a very supportive federal government that made a major investment, over $100 billion towards passenger rail in the current bipartisan infrastructure law. So the narrative has definitely changed. So for each of you three, what's really exciting to you about the prospects of rail in the US right now?
Well, Sophia, I would also add, in addition to Europe, Asia has many longstanding high-speed rail systems. I love the question and the topic because, and I'll go back to the time I worked for Ray LaHood when he was DOT secretary. He got this question all the time as well. And I think his answer was spot on. He basically said, the United States has never made the hard political decision to spend a certain percentage of our GDP on rail, whether it's high speed or conventional rail. We just never did it, unlike other countries. Now, of course, those comments were made before the passage of IIJA, and now we're in a different situation. But he's right. We just never made that political decision. Thankfully, we have, and hopefully we can do something with it.
I think it's a perfect time for us using the example of the Pacific Northwest, and we've been using state-supported Amtrak service in the North-South corridor between Vancouver, BC, and through Oregon and Washington State. And we've been building ridership, building round trips, building service, and now we're at this moment where we've formed a mega region called Cascadia that is the innovation arm of business, public, and private sponsorship that is trying to build a sustainable future for 2050. We're eyeing this plan of how do we get there? We have common environmental goals. We have very similar geography and other kinds of things, and university great smarts in our region. And so knowing that we now have 9 million people living in this region, and we're expecting another 3 to 4 by 2050, we have to figure out how people are going to have mobility. And the idea is to take our higher speed rail system that we have and complement it with a truly high-speed rail system between Vancouver, BC, and Portland, Oregon, and beyond. And the notion is better environmental impacts, rapid movement, not relying just on air, and complementing all of the local and regional transit service in the area for a truly intermodal and multimodal system that's going to serve the growth and the needs of the system, but in a sustainable way.
Sophia, here in the Sunbelt region, we're a little different than Cascadia in that we have not had a very robust rail system from a regional standpoint. We've always enjoyed long distance rail with Amtrak, but we've not had the ability to get beyond the streetcar line in a sense, or the transit lines that you might see in certain communities. What excites me about where we are now, in addition to having leadership at the national level that really gets it on rail, we've got an amazing stakeholder group that's really mobilizing to build regional rail services in different parts of the Sun Belt. And what's exciting about it is it's going to marry communities. When I think about Baton Rouge to New Orleans or New Orleans to Mobile, it's going to tie communities together where we may not enjoy the 8 or 9 million people that we just heard Sophia talk about, but we're going to have probably 3 to 5 million people in that entire Gulf Coast region that will take advantage of this service. And we have not seen this type of activity since post-Katrina, when the services were destroyed. And so as we look to evolve and grow and recognize this as an alternative and a meaningful mobility solution, I think it's going to do wonders for our economy, but also tying these regions together.
Well, that's so great. And I love how all three of you in your answers, you really talked about, the commitment necessary from the national level to the interstate or the international commitment necessary to push these forward, and how it really feels like we have that now. And I was actually just on the train this morning. I'm based in New York, but I'm in DC today, and let me tell you, the 6:30 a.m. train, there was not an empty seat, and it was such a pleasant, efficient way to get here for a full day of business. And so I think that the public demand is there too, which is really important, all of this. So if we have the commitment and we have the public demand, there's obviously some challenges too, right? I mean, if it was easy, we would have done it already. So what are a couple of the challenges in getting to this vision?
Well, I think I'll just say this. I think the program, the bill, or IIJA as others know it, it's going to give it a shot in the arm that's needed to get some of these projects started and some of the service started. Once you get momentum, I think we're going to be able to find a way to have that public support and truly demand for better passenger rail service in the U.S.
Here in the Sun Belt, Sophia, the challenges are pretty significant in terms of, one, dealing with the industrial rail corridors that we have. We've got all 5 class 1s, and you can't discount the fact that we've developed tremendously well in that space. But with all of the explosion and development and growth, we have to go back in and figure out how to retrofit in some cases. So that's a challenge. But more importantly, diversifying and seeing the opportunity to change the way we fund transportation to be able to invest in this. And folks have to really wrap their heads around the development that tends to follow these types of services that are going to be developed. I mean, you can look at what you see, whether it's in New York or in DC, and all of those places you stop in between, you have thriving economies that can produce revenue that can then go back in and help subsidize and support the programs to build the infrastructure we need to really grow our transportation network.
If you think about it, building true high-speed rail is similar in so many ways to building the interstate highway system. You need a lot of space. And that means acquiring land, property, right-of-way, and that is so expensive. And I think we always get the question from people around the world, why does it take so damn long to build in the United States? And this is one of them. Private property rights are held in high esteem in the United States. That is a value that is cherished by many. And so you have to go through due process, and you have to negotiate with the property owner and all of those things. That takes time, and it's very expensive. And so it's not like other countries where they can say, well, we're building it here, off you go. Nice knowing you. We have to go through a process, and that takes so much time, and people don't recognize that.
The biggest barrier is the politics and the leadership challenge of getting out of our own way to enable this to happen. Engineers can do anything, right? We all can figure this out. And it's more about having the will to do it. And if we can get over that hurdle and start building those kinds of champions, I think we're going to be able to launch these kinds of programs.
Sophia, we talked a little bit on the last conversation, I believe, about the stick-to-itness that's necessary to really maintain these kinds of investments. If we don't double down on what we've seen in the Infrastructure and Investment Jobs Act, then shame on us. If we don't grow from that billion-dollar investment, multi-billion dollars investment for Amtrak, if we don't leverage that and do more, then it's going to be wasted resources. And, as Davey said, it takes time. We've got to manage expectations. We've got to stay motivated, and we've got to stick to a plan to achieve the goal and the desired outcome. If not, we're just spinning our wheels and we're not going to be on the tracks.
And stick-to-itness is an engineering term, very complicated.
And stay on the tracks.
One example.
Go ahead, Davey. Final point.
One example where property rights or private property is not needed is the Brightline project from Las Vegas to Southern California, which just broke ground. One of the highlights of my time as transportation secretary in California was negotiating and eventually signing a lease agreement with Brightline so they could use the median of I-15 to build the high-speed rail system. So no right-of-way needed, no property takings, at least until they get to Southern California, which is heavily populated. But until then, they've got room to build the project, and that was fabulous. And that will enable them to really get going fairly quickly.
That is a great point to end on, because it also shows the creativity coming into this space, right? Private investment in rail with the very successful Brightline project in Florida, now going to Brightline West, which everyone is super excited about. And so I think, Sean properly threw the gauntlet down. If we don't take advantage of this moment, then shame on us. And I hope everyone learned a bit about the momentum that's going into building out our rail network right now. So thank you all for your expert input. Thank you all for listening in, and here's to a bright future in rail. Take care, everyone.
Go rail.
Bye.